Hello friends, it's me and today's video is going to be about my Cave of the Winds experience. I set on my camcorder that I was going to record this video on my camcorder, but it died. So I'm going to have to use my cell phone. So today, me, my boyfriend, my friend Jade, her boyfriend Dave, my other friend Derek, and his fiance Karen, we go to the Cave of the Winds for a discovery tour. Now, what a discovery tour is pretty much the guide leads us to the darkest part of the Cave of the Winds with a bunch of lanterns that we all hold. There's no flashlights. There's no pretty much artificial light that is used in this tour. Just pure lanterns. So we make it to the darkest part of the cave after the guy takes us through the light parts of the cave and tells us about the history. And he says that they use an iron fence to keep out all the spirits from escaping that part of the cave. And keep this fence in mind as I'm saying this story. So the guy gives us our lanterns, we make our way in, and we make it to this part of the cave in the entrance where there's a lantern which my friend Karen thought was a shrine, and it was just a lantern that hasn't been lit up. So the guy gives us a warning pretty much saying, this is your last chance to leave, and if not, then we're going to continue with the tour. None of us left. There was 6 of us, so none of us really left. And so then we make it to this area that's considered the duck walking part of the cave, where you pretty much have to crouch and waddle like a duck just to make it through because it's really narrow and we might hit our heads. And so while we were doing that, I felt something brush up against my leg, and there's no way it was like any animals because there are no animals in the cave except for maybe like a few spiders. And so we make it to this open area where to the right of us is where we're going to go next, and to the left of us we weren't allowed to go into. So the guide had Jade and Dave stand in front of the entryway to the area, and he told us to not look. He told them to not look in there, but we, who were standing in front of him and we were allowed to freaking look into the cave, into that area. And there was nothing there that we could see pretty much, and I couldn't see because I forgot my glasses and my contacts. So yeah, the guy tells us about the owner of the place, George. Now, George would have done anything at his time to make tourists come in and give him their money. And what he did was a mummy advertisement. And so one day, these college students came in, and there was he wanted to scare them with the mummy thing that he told them, and that's what he does with every tourist. But when he opened the hatch that contained the mummy, it was gone. And so he started accusing the college students, and then he took one of their lanterns and pretty much just left that person in the dark and ran off. And so then, as we were doing that, I should tell you guys this story that the guy told us about as soon as we were entering the cave. George's first wife, Nelly, also haunts the cave. So in her life, she's been known as a trickster to the tourists, and she would hide under the cave crevices. And if the people saw her, she would wink at them and be like, don't tell anyone. But what she would do was she would pull on people's hair, scare them, poke them, and even today, now, she doesn't like hats or beanies. And I was wearing a beanie, hence why my hair's so messy. So I was freaked out, and so was my friend Jade. But anyway, keep this in mind as the story continues. She's dead, and I will get into why she's dead later. But so I'm in front of this wall that's behind me, and Jade is standing to the left of me. Derek is standing to the right of me, and his fiance Karen is also to the right of him, gripping his arm, and my boyfriend was to the right of them. Now, as the tour guide was talking, I felt a tapping on my shoulder, and I look around and I'm like, who the heck was that? So I asked Derek, did you just tap my shoulder just now while the tour guide was talking? But I whispered to him in a low voice. I'm like, did you do it? And he's like, no, I was recording what was going on in the direction that Jade and Dave are standing in. And he was recording it with a tape recorder in his left hand. Well, what about his right hand, Red? Well, his right hand had the lantern he was carrying. And keep in mind, you guys, that these lanterns don't have glass. So it's easy for somebody to just put it up against them and burn themselves accidentally. And he would not be so stupid as to do that. And so finally, after the cave guide was finished talking and we were going to move into the next area, I quickly rushed to Jade. I'm like, Jade, did you just tap my shoulder just now? And keep in mind, you guys, Jade is at least a couple of a foot away from me, so she can't exactly just tap my shoulder. But I asked her for the heck of it. I'm like, did you just tap my shoulder? And she's like, no, I didn't tap your shoulder. And I'm like, somebody tapped my shoulder. And me and my boyfriend came to the conclusion that it was Nelly. And how Nelly died pretty much was she was admitted to a mental institution before this happened, so she hasn't exactly been the same. But one day she decided to just get up and clean everything, and it was kind of considered manic because of like how she was acting. And so George noted that she was cleaning the windows but pressing on them very hard, and because of that she fell through the window and the glass hit the ground and she slit her wrist open when she hit the ground, and then she tumbled to her death, and George found her a few days later. So that's how she died. But she still is up to her tricks in the cave. So she pretty much just she pulls people's hair still. I don't think she scares them anymore because that would be a little too horrifying. And she pokes people, as I mentioned, with me. And the tour guide said that if you see her, she'll be wearing a blue dress with like a female mannequin face kind of, but she only, it's a rare kind of thing and only little kids have seen her. And most people have seen George in that cave, so we didn't see her, but we did smell her perfume. And the guide said that her perfume has a faint smell of roses. And so we smelled that, which was good because, yeah, we'd have to give her a compliment, or she'd show us an very unsettling way to give her a compliment. So we go to the right side where the tour guide was leading us, and there was like this rock formation as like a protection thing to keep people safe. And to the left of us was this place called the Lover's Tunnel. And according to the guide, the people who were there for like paranormal investigations and whatnot reported that the Lover's Tunnel had the most paranormal activity and stuff like that, and energy spikes and whatnot in that area. But we were gonna go there last. So we make it to the right side of the cave, and there are these writings on the walls that are different states pretty much. And George does not like the southern side, so he didn't put any of the southern states down. But the guide was telling us that there was this lady back in 2012 who visited the cave, and she thought it was just like pretty much like the 13th floors, like the employees are just dressed up in costumes and we're expecting jump scares. She went from every corner expecting to see an employee jump out and scare her, and that wasn't the case. And so finally she makes it to this hole in the ground. It's a very big hole, and they have it blocked, but we can still like see it and take pictures of it. So eventually she makes it there, and a bunch of people heard her say, "Ah, I found you," or whatever. And she pulls out this black hand. Now, the reports say that this hand was black as coal, and she pulls it out to where she can see the head, and she sees nothing on the face except these black holes where the eyes would have been. And so that made the lady freak out and have a panic attack, and she ran to the part that I just mentioned where there was a protection for the formation of the rock, and she gripped to the pole. She gripped the pole of that and would not let go. And so while this was happening, a guy went down in the hole and investigated it, and he said that the lantern fell at least 100 feet down in there, which is odd because it's not it's not a very like long drop, but he said it was thrown 100 feet because the lady threw her lantern in there to prevent whatever it was she saw from coming out. And because of that, that's how the lantern got down there. And it was very unsettling for him because, one, the lady was crying and it made him very uncomfortable. So he climbed up all the way, and the tour guide who was touring us today pretty much had to call the medics and whatnot to remove her because she was having a panic attack, and they apologized to her, but for whatever reason she will not go back into the cave no matter what they say or do for her. And I thought that was pretty creepy. So continuing on, as he was telling us that story, my boyfriend looked at me and was like, "Hey, look." And I'm like, what is it, babe? And he says he sees a face in the darkness to the right of us. And I'm like, a face? And when I look, I just see nothing but a body. I don't see the face, I see the body. And it was just a white blur. And so I move around a bit, and I'm standing on the opposite side of the wall, and Dave, who is standing next to Jade, well, the writing is right on the side in front of his shoulder, but I saw like this white blur past his shoulder. And I would show you guys the video clips, but it's a little too dark and I don't think you'll be able to see. But we saw that. And my friend Derek, who said he was recording in the tunnel, he said as soon as he turned his head out of the corner of his peripheral, he saw this shadowy figure pass by, and it had the shape of the head. It was pretty much black, but there was like no holes or whatever. He didn't see any like holes in the eyes. It was just a black shadow, and he saw that pass by in the little tunnel where the woman saw the demon, the supposed demon, in that tunnel. And so we continue on, and we make it to this ladder where this gentleman, who is George's brother, was known to play music because there was fluorite on the ceilings that were used for like music back in the day. And so they also had like an opera area, which was considered an opera room, and that's where all the guests would like dance and whatever. And then the brother would play the music, but then one day the music stopped and they heard a loud shriek, and it was George's brother who somehow fell down, and he was pushed quite far, and he fell quite far. He fell quite far from this ledge, and then his foot got stuck in this hole, and then he fell down head first and ended up snapping his neck. He somehow lived, but 10 days later, for like 10 days, and then 10 days later, he ended up passing. And so George went on and investigated everyone who was in the area, saying, did you push him off or whatever? And there was nobody else up there with him. So they assumed he was either pushed or he jumped off himself and wanted to do this. And so, as that was going on, nothing happened, of course, but my friend Derek was still recording. And my boyfriend also noticed up there that there was like a rope of some kind, he says, but we didn't find anything else like cuckoo or whatever going into that area. And and so we go into this other area, and it was the last area of the cave, and it was the lover's room. And so the guy told us we need a couple to go in there to make sure that it's safe. And I thought it was weird, but I was too terrified to want to go in there. But my boyfriend, who was just talking to me about it like a while ago, he said that he wanted us to go in there. And I'm like, okay, I was going to say, okay, even though I was terrified, but no one else would step forward. So Jade and her boyfriend Dave were like, okay. we're just gonna go in ourselves. And so the tour guide made this joke about leaving them, but after like a couple of minutes, we all heard we're safe. And so we entered this little tunnel where we had to like duck walk in pretty much. And then we make it to this like area where in the back is where George and Nelly slept in, and they just had a mat and they slept in like this very small area, and they would come out, and then we find this wheelbarrow. And so that's when the tour guide told us to do the most terrifying thing of all inside a cave, which was stand in 4 minutes of darkness while he tells us a ghost story. And he had us blow out our lanterns, of course, which was horrifying. And so we all blew out our lanterns at the same time, and there was no light in that room whatsoever. And while that happened, I had my left ear plugged because I was one of the unfortunate people who was standing like right near the entrance where something stupid could happen, and it was bad. While he was telling us the story, I had my ear plugged, but then that's when we started smelling the rose perfume. And my boyfriend was trying to tell me that he smelled rose perfume. I smelled it faintly, but the tour guide cut him off and was like, hey man, I really appreciate it if I was the only one talking. And he's like, I'm sorry. But he tried telling them that he smelled Nelly in the area. And so he continues on for about 4 minutes until finally it gets silent. And Karen made this comment. She's like, why did it get so quiet? I'm like, I know, right? And all of a sudden we hear this loud dropping of a bucket, and the tour guide pretty much just had us jump and Karen scream, blowing out Derek's eardrum pretty much. Not really, he's okay. But yeah, that was horrifying. And my boyfriend was starting to hallucinate in the dark because of being in the dark for like 4 minutes. He started hallucinating, and I was holding him and stuff like that. It was just scary. And so the guide said, it's time for us to go home because they are behind schedule. So he leaves us out. And as we were walking out, we were asking questions about the other two spirits that he hasn't mentioned. He told us that in the beginning that there are two spirits in the cave named Abigail and Gara. Now, as we're entering, we noticed like these two holes in the walls, like big holes, enough to fit a person in. One of those holes is where the spirit who calls herself Abigail committed suicide in the beginning. And then there's another spirit named Gara who the tour guide told us not to mention because it would upset Nelly. Why? Because Gara was George's second wife after her passing. And so that's all he would tell us. But we make it back to the entranceway, and as a last laugh from Nelly decides to knock out my my lantern and the lantern candle and the wick. She decides to knock it out of my lantern, and one of the tour guides commented, we were waiting for it to happen to somebody, and I knew since from the beginning of the trip that I would be the unfortunate soul to have my lantern knocked out of my hand. And so as instructed, I told Nelly, thank you, Nelly, for knocking the lantern out of my hand. And we just left. But according to my friends, they all told me that Nelly seemed to be liking me for some odd reason. I asked them why. Well, Jade theorizes that on her way in the cave, my boyfriend was giving her compliments because he was already freaked the fuck out. And he assumed, we assumed that because of that, Nelly was thinking, he's cool, so maybe his girlfriend is cool too because we're together. And so we think that's what made me jump when I had my shoulder tapped and when I got my leg touched. Now for the other occurrences, like the black shadowy figure with the human head that my friend Derek saw, we have no idea what that could be. When we were in the Lover's Cave, the tour guide told us about the mummy story and how it just kept growing mold and was sitting in like this weird fetal position, and it had mold and mildew coming from out of it. And he thinks George at the time thought that was like a spirit, because after that incident with his brother, he became very superstitious. And because of that, he thought the mold that was coming from the mummy, right, because he found the mummy, the mold that was coming from the mummy was like spirit. And for some odd reason, after the mummy started getting like mildew and whatnot, it was hard to get rid of, so George just burned it. But here's the urban myth that's been going on in the cave. People think that the spirit of the mummy who is here is going around in the cave, being revengeful because it didn't like how it was treated during George's time. And that's when we all got jump scared by the tour guide, because yeah, why not? But that was our fun little cave experience. This video took way longer than it should have. It was very exciting to say. I want to give it a C. Why? Because, well, it wasn't anything major. Like, there was no demonic force. It was pretty much all just human spirits that were just giving us trouble, like Nelly. And me and my boyfriend did assume this, but the tour guide also told us that we would possibly see George's spirit in the cave, and we assumed it was a face that my boyfriend saw, and the body that I saw that was standing to the right of us, and we assumed that was George. We don't know about the other two spirits yet, and I was gonna Google them, but I think I'll hold off on it because I'm pooped out for the day. But yeah, I'm glad I was able to share that experience with you guys. I would have posted videos along with this, but it was too dark, and my camcorder died while I was trying to record this video, so I had to use my phone. But announcements, you guys. So I bought Resident Evil 2, and be expecting me to live stream that on YouTube soon after I finish Kingdom Hearts. I'm pretty sure I'm close to finishing Kingdom Hearts. I'm in San Francisco, so I'm assuming that it's almost pretty much endgame route from there. But yeah, I hope you guys have a sunny day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!